You're watching the Mic Check powered by VAU Networks.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the VAU Mic Check. Yes, I am back. I was out last week, but I am here with a video game copy, and it's going to be a good one. It is a prologue for a video game where you are a thief narrating your own story. And for those of us who have used that zone practice, it is mostly a zone 1 type of read. It's a little more subtle, subdued, not there can be energy. Oh yeah, there can be, and there should be. But with that, we will kick this off and see who wants to read this first.
I'll take a stab at it.
All right.
All right. If there's one thing this city's taught me, you can put a price on anything. Secrets, reputations, a life. And trust, if you have to ask, you can't afford it. But then I suppose none of that matters when you're me. After all, when did I ever pay for anything?
All right. You get to choose who goes next after you.
Ooh, is that how we do this? Okay.
Yes. We've switched it up a little bit since last you were on.
Yeah. Okay. Let's hear from Shane.
If there's one thing this city's taught me, you can put a price on anything. Secrets, reputations, a life. And trust, if you have to ask, you can't afford it. But then I suppose none of that matters when you're me. After all, when did I ever pay for anything?
All right, Shane, who's following you up?
And now, on to Golda. I'd like to get a female perspective on this.
Okay, sounds good. If there's one thing this city's taught me, you can put a price on anything. Secrets, reputation, a life, and trust. If you have to ask, you can't afford it. But then, I suppose none of that matters when you're me. After all, when did I ever pay for anything? Okay, Alan.
Okay. If there's one thing this city's taught me, you can put a price on anything. Secrets, reputation, a life. And trust? If you have to ask, you can't afford it. But then I suppose none of that matters when you're me. After all, when did I ever pay for anything? Nathan.
If there's one thing this city's taught me, you can put a price on anything. Secrets, reputations, a life, and trust. If you have to ask, you can't afford it. But then I suppose none of that matters when you're me. After all, when did I ever pay for anything? That leaves Michael.
That it does. If there's one thing this city's taught me, you can put a price on anything. Secrets, reputations, a life, and trust. If you have to ask, you can't afford it. But I suppose none of that matters when you're me. After all, when did I ever pay for anything? So that concludes the reading portion of the Mic Check. Now to the discussion.
I got to give Alan kudos for that breathy active hush thing going on there.
Yeah, that was really nice.
And Nathan, I think you had a lot of character in there. I liked the way you portrayed the character.
I believe somewhere along the way I've seen this game. I don't think I've ever played it, but you
Yeah,
know,
I'm familiar with this game too, but I've never played it either.
the thing with this character, and this is the big thing, you're dealing with somebody who is very streetwise, very salty. You know, they have been around the block a time or two. They've taken their fair share of beatings as well as given their fair share of beatings. You know, and for the most part, uh, nobody is honest in their world.
Mhm.
The word trust in there, you know, and trust. And that's the big thing, is looking at that small portion of copy and seeing that you're there's a world around that he's coming from, you know, and literally seeing that character's backstory and what you're putting out there.
So do you see this as a dark character?
He can be, you know.
Well, I don't see why not,
and-
especially since, you know, he mentions you can put a price on anything, even a life.
yeah,
Mhm.
So that sounds pretty callous to me.
he's hardened, salty.
Yeah.
And
I thought there was a little bit of a devil may care, is that the word that phrase I'm looking for? Attitude as well. Like there's a dark edge to it, but at the same time, you know, secrets, reputation, and life, it's like, you know, these are just baubles that I play with, if that's what it calls for.
Yeah, totally agree. I totally agree that this has sort of like almost an emotionally detached feel
Yeah.
to it.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, because literally in his world, he survives.
Mhm.
And this is life for this character. Well, you know, when you were the character, that character's you. So this is your life.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're a survivor. You're living in a world that's harsh and dark, and there's no elegance to it. You know, not by the definition that most people would think elegance is.
So jaded.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it almost doesn't. I mean, Jaded sort of has this this sort of feel of like a negative emotion attached to it. Like you'd need to deliver it with some really dark, like, you know, almost sneering attitude. When to me, this just seems like business. It almost seems detached. You know, like this is just this person who's lived this life all of their life,
Mm-hmm.
just explaining their world. Like, yeah, well, whatever, it's business.
This is
Yeah,
my
no, I hear what you're saying. So it jaded implies too much emotion.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Because jaded would mean that you've been like burned one too many times, you know, like you've had you've reached out for something and had your hand slapped way too many times. Just don't even bother with it. You know, you've just given up. You're kind of sick of it.
Yeah.
When this is just secrets, reputations, a life, you know, it's business. This is what this person does daily.
Kind of a slyness. Now, I read a book a long time ago. It was about a con artist, and he had this kind of personality that I can see this character having, you know, and he was slick. He was super confident in what he did, you know. But what was it? His description was he was so good that the government actually hired him to take down other con artists.
Mhm.
That wasn't the Catch Me If You Can guy, was it?
No. It was actually a science fiction book.
Because
but
that's what he ended up doing after
it's true.
Frank Abagnale. Is that his name? Frank Abagnale.
Abington, yeah, that's it, yeah.
Yeah.
I saw, and it really, actually, that's the same type of confidence. It's the same kind of thing.
Mhm.
It's like I've got, you know, Yeah, well, I mean that line at the back end of this. After all, when did I ever pay for anything?
Yeah.
In other words, who said nothing in life is free?
Yeah, my point of view here was, has anybody seen the movie Out of Sight
No.
with George Clooney and Jennifer Lopez, Ving Rhames? It's Pulp Fiction-ish, and that the story is not told in linear fashion. You know, it jumps back and forth chronologically. But Clooney in that movie is kind of the guy in this script, except probably not quite as dark, not quite as probably salty, and not capable of killing. He was just a career bank robber and had been in federal prison most of his life and escapes in the movie. And J-Lo is the federal marshal who is assigned to take him down and catch him and put him back in prison, and she ends up falling in love with him. But that's what I was going for on my read.
Yeah, I tried to look for where there were sort of turns in it, where, you know, first there's sort of this edge thing, because, you know, one thing the city has taught me, and then sort of then, you know, there's sort of the talking about the secrets and the reputation, and then if you have to ask, you can't afford it, is obviously this little bit of a note, and then the wrap up, and then the when did I ever pay for anything, sort of like different. It's like there's this whole story going on in this short little script.
Yeah. And the thing with this particular character is on the trust side. If you have to ask, you can't afford it. Most people say trust is earned, you know, but I mean, somebody like of this nature would have a way of wiggling their way into somebody's life, you know, and being trustworthy on the surface.
Yeah, what that seems to imply, at least to me, is that you can only trust the people with the deepest pockets.
Yeah.
You know, if you're not paying for protection, you're getting stabbed in the back by it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Or you may think you have trust, but, you know, that this person is trustworthy, but really they're only as trustworthy as their salary.
Yeah, exactly.
They can give you the confidence that you can trust. I'm reading a book right now that has a character who used to be a preceptor to this really powerful person, and now he's on his own. And there's like all this conversation about how, you know, the way he speaks, you feel like you can trust him and rely on him, and then he'll turn around and backstab somebody.
So then my question is, now that we sort of have this general idea of what this character's traits are, how would they sound? Like specifically, how would you describe their voice quality, their delivery, their demeanor? Like, what are we supposed to sound like now?
In the delivery side of this, I picture this person being maybe somewhere either, you know, in a back alley, street corner, or even in, you know, some kind of pub/bar situation, having an intimate conversation.
Okay. So it's definitely a one-on-one.
And you know, it's one of those, you're speaking face to face with someone. So yeah, it's definitely a zone 1 read.
Yeah, I would agree.
Who joined us for zones. It's one of those intimate, this is the way I'm talking to you because I don't need the rest of the crowd hearing what I'm saying to you.
Yeah, just as a quick primer, just so we have that out there, in case anybody's not familiar with it, Zone 1 was just as Nathan did, close up on the mic, kind of quiet, kind of intimate. Zone 2 is your general recording distance where you're, you know, at least a good, see if I can display this properly, a good about this far away from the microphone. Basically, you generally want to record. And Zone 3 is farther back, and it's a little louder. So when we're talking about zone 1 reads, we're talking about being up close, being a little quiet, and being sort of intimate with the microphone. So just as a refresher.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And Dan has joined us.
Welcome, Dan.
Oh, wait. I think he's behind the wheel of his vehicle right now.
Yeah, I think so.
Yes, he is actually. So no, he hasn't really joined us.
But at least he's listening.
He's on the road with the mic check.
Mic check mobile.
I'll have to get out my road video bit that I can tag on the front and the back of this and put in that music. You know.
The road mic.
There you go. The road mic. All righty.
Road while I'm on the road.
Sorry, Golda, what were you going to say?
I have a question. Could there be like a 0.5 zone? Because I could see him talking about the stuff and then like coming in close if you have to ask. You know, because when I talk to somebody, there's different close, like I'm talking quietly, but then I might get extra quiet, like whisper to the person kind of thing.
Well,
Would that be a
the zones sort of encompass a range.
Okay.
What you could do if you wanted to do something like that, as an example, you could do a quiet zone 2 and then come in close for zone 1.
Yeah.
You know, you
Because that
could
was
you
what
could
I was
potentially
trying
do
for.
that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's something you could potentially do.
Mhm.
But yeah, I don't know if you could get like a 0.5 zone. What would that be? Maybe like this close?
Yeah. Let me swallow the mic. Oh, maybe not.
That deep whisper in the ear kind of zone right there.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, that's basically just a toned down zone 1. You're just close and you're just talking right to the microphone.
Okay.
I don't know. My mic is kind of sensitive, so even this far sounds fairly close. If I tried to get any closer, I'd have to like whisper.
On this thing, it's just beautiful.
Oh yeah. But yeah. So if you wanted to try that, you could do for a zone 2 or a zone 2 to a zone 1. My personal take, just from reading this with everybody, is that this is definitely either a quiet, close zone 2 or solidly a zone 1 read.
Yeah.
Because this is obviously, since it's the prologue, it's the character and the player. This is a one-on-one dialogue. It's soliloquy. That's the word. That's the word I'm looking for.
He's literally building you up for the story that lies ahead. You know, and
yeah, there's definitely foreshadowing in this and whatnot.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, and I'm going to call myself out on this one. I think I was doing it a little too fast. I think this requires it to be even a little slow.
Yeah.
This is almost audiobook speed, I would say.
Yeah. I mean, it literally, and I've heard Pat Fraley mention this, and game designers don't like to hear this so don't ever say it in front of a game designer, but there's a theater-like melodrama that goes with video game copy reads. It's something that you have to do it that way. I mean, it's not like reading for a cartoon and not like reading for a commercial. It's just basically just think theater.
Yeah, video games are where radio theater has gone.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's where radio theater has ended up. Before, the melodrama, the seriousness, everything like that was radio theater, and that's sort of now transitioned over to video games to an extent. I'm not going to say that's for everything. Don't quote me on that.
No, it's not for everything. But most of the drama that's involved in video games is that melodrama. Not chewing the scenery, mind you, although some people have, and pick a game. I'm sure there are people who have literally eaten every piece of furniture in the scenery, but
sounds like Max Payne. I'm sorry. For those of you who are unfamiliar with it, Max Payne is a series of games. It's very sort of film noir, like old style. The main character is the narrator throughout the entire thing and is always narrating what's going on in the background, basically.
She walked
so
in.
It's got that same sort of feel. Yeah, yeah.
You can play the game blindfolded and it's fine.
Yeah, exactly. It'll describe what, like, the exact pattern on the wallpaper and exactly how it's peeling off and how it looks awkward, things like that. I don't know. But
The
yeah,
object you're looking for is in the corner. That's how much I'm narrating it. It's right there. Look at it.
but anyway, so back to the sort of the feel and the idea describing the voice. So we've got sort of either a quiet zone 2 to a zone 1 or a strict zone 1 read. What else are people thinking when it comes to this person?
I would say a lower voice. So it wouldn't be something like here. That would be kind of a little bit weird. You kind of expect a sort of a tough, serious.
So I shouldn't go get the helium?
Well,
No.
the thing with that right there is start with your attitude.
Mhm.
Okay. Like, remember how you did that character the other day on Facebook?
Yeah.
Where I said great attitude?
Yep.
Because every character, I don't care who they are, if they're 12 years old or if they're 90 years old and smoking a cigarette. It all starts with their attitude.
Uh-huh.
This guy's personality starts with his attitude. Everything starts with that attitude, you know. So if I read this, in a higher pitched voice, as if I were younger, but still had that saltiness because I've been out on the streets since the day my mom kicked me out of the house at 3 years old, I had to walk those streets. I had to do what I could to survive. I was stealing apples at 4. It's all about the attitude.
Yeah.
Regardless of how young I sound, it's my attitude that makes the difference.
Yeah. So I guess it would be an intensity, not a pitch necessarily.
Correct.
It's never pitch. It's always attitude.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So you could read it in a high falsetto and
Mhm.
still serious. It would probably have a comical end to it reading in falsetto. You're going by the city's told me you can't put a price on anything. Yeah, no. That draws out the comedy in it. But in this case, though, it's all about attitude, not pitch.
Yeah.
And
What is interesting that I found this week that doesn't directly go to this, but relates to characters and how it might be comedy if it was falsetto, is that I was trying to do a character who was refined but had a Brooklyn accent.
Mhm.
And it was really, really hard because when I went into the lighter, more refined thing, I found myself wandering into some other accent because I think of Brooklyn as being this, I'm from Brooklyn, what do you want, kind of thing. And I was trying to do somebody who was upper class but from Brooklyn. And it just took a while for my brain to no, we're really doing that accent and this attitude.
I'm upper class, but I used to be a cab driver. Yeah. I like my caviar and I like my beer.
He was always upper class in this case, but luckily I found somebody who was upper class in Brooklyn. But
So then this character is definitely going to be close and quiet and attitude first on it. It's just, this is business. You have to detach yourself from the things that most people are sensitive to in order to live in this world.
Yep.
Yeah. Because your foundation is your attitude.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So then, well, I would say talk in the tone that's most comfortable for you, because trying to push, your voice lower than it would naturally go has, and I've seen it happen so much, has this funny effect on people's reads where it does become more comical than it needs to be. Like, I don't think you need to try to deepen your voice at all. I don't think we need to try to sound like, I don't know.
The Godfather?
Yeah, whatever. Choose archetypal dark character, insert here. We don't need to try to sound like somebody else. This is all about the attitude that we're going in with. We've all dealt with people who are kind of like this at some point, or at least we've seen characters who are like this. One of my favorite examples of attitude before voice is the game The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. Now, a lot of that game is very fantasy oriented, all of the characters are rooted in something real. All of these characters feel real. They feel absolutely natural as people living in this world. And one of my favorite examples of that specifically, of this attitude before voice or attitude before appearance, is a character who is supposed to be this like master spy. And when you think of master spy, you usually think of somebody who's always dressed in dark clothes and who's, I don't know, thin and lithe and able to, run forever, things like that, just physical fitness, everything like that. But this character was one of the ugliest people like I'd ever seen designed in a video game. The eyes were too close together. The nose was massive. Head was big and round. It weighed like 350 pounds. Just this big guy who ran a like a bathhouse. And this was a master spy. And even the voice in the character was so, it so flew in the face of what I expected a master spy to be. And I thought it was this perfect example of when you put your character's attitude first, it does not matter what you look like. It does not matter what they look like. It does not matter how you sound. None of that. Because people will buy the character if you buy the character.
Yes. I can add to that. I don't know who in here has watched Babylon 5.
Probably only an episode or two.
Yeah, a few episodes, a long time ago.
Well, they have a guy on there, one of the alien characters, and I mean the makeup is movie quality, awesome. I mean, it looks better than stuff in Star Trek. Okay, sorry, Star Trek fans, don't get mad at me, but hey. Anyway, the thing of it is, I was watching this guy's performance, okay, and he was distraught, and he was doing this, I mean, really, really heavy-duty emotional scene. And it literally made me forget the alien makeup, made me forget all that, and I saw the person. I mean, I was feeling his. It's like I wanted to console the guy because of how he was delivering everything. Mm-hmm. It was from that baseline of his attitude of how of what was going on from the inside. And I mean, it puts you in this frame of mind with, this is a real live person. Yes, he has brown and green spots, but he's a real person.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. That's it. That's that baseline of attitude.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now that we have that set, we've got the characters' general attitude and sound. Why don't we go ahead and go back into the reads? Does that sound good to everybody?
Yeah, that sounds fantastic.
Sounds
Yep.
good.
All right, cool. So Sean, you were up first. Why don't you go ahead and take it away? This is where the directed reads will happen.
Okay, cool. If there's one thing this city's taught me, you can put a price on anything. Secrets, reputations, a life. And trust, if you have to ask, you can't afford it. But then I suppose none of that matters when you're me. After all, when did I ever pay for anything?
All right, what did everybody think?
That was good. I would add a little more hush to that. Because you're having an intimate conversation with someone.
Right.
And I mean, just that low, just add a little more whisper to it. Now, just pull back your voice a little more like that.
Okay. We'll try again?
Yeah.
Okay. If there's one thing this city's taught me, you can put a price on anything. Secrets, reputations, a life. And trust, if you have to ask, you can't afford it. But then I suppose none of that matters when you're me. After all, when did I ever pay for anything?
Yeah, better.
Cool.
Yeah, you definitely got a good tone. The one thing that stuck out to me in both of those reads, though, is that you put a lot of emphasis on a life. And yeah, it's separate, but I still think you need to stay within that sort of like business feel, because secrets and reputations are this intangible thing. And a life yeah, it's very much so tangible, and that's supposed to be a shock. And I think, like, I would imagine, I don't know what's going on in your mind, but the pictures happening in my brain are right at that point, somebody stabbing somebody else in the back. You know, just this quick stab in the back, and then they just collapse. And, you know, it's sort of like that shot in shadows sort of feel, where this person is just killed and nobody understands why. But the thing is to this character, this is a complete emotional detachment. It's just another intangible thing. Somebody else's life doesn't matter to this person. So I think, though I understand why, or like how you would be, how you would interpret getting that, or putting that emphasis there, I think it just needs to be same thing: secrets, reputation, a life. You know, I think the shock comes from the callousness.
I almost feel like he's telling it to someone else, so he wants them to know that that's part of what this is, and so like he's expecting their shock, and he's saying it's a life, like this is part of it. So maybe like a little emphasis, but maybe with less emotion, like you're saying. Does that sound about?
And that's why I think that there's that gap written there.
Yeah.
Just the emphasis is just give it slightly more space, but it's still sort of it's just a life. And I don't know if anybody else got this, but to me, it almost seems if you have to ask, you can't afford it, is almost like a joke.
Yeah. Maybe
you know, like,
Yeah,
exactly. You're kind of scoffing it off because if you can't, you know, if you have to ask, you don't have the money for it.
Yeah, that was what it felt like this time, actually.
Mm-hmm.
It could be either way.
It can.
It could either be a threat, or it could be if you have to ask, you can't afford it.
Yeah, although I think putting in the laugh would be a little bit too much for this character.
Yeah, definitely.
But,
I wouldn't put a laugh in there, but sort of that.
Just a scoff, like a
Stop.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
So why don't you go ahead and give it another take?
Okay. If there's one thing this city's taught me, you can put a price on anything. Secrets, reputations, a life. And trust. If you have to ask, you can't afford it. But then I suppose none of that matters when you're me. After all, when did I ever pay for anything?
All right. What did everybody think of that, Reed?
I can feel that. I could see him in the scene.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty good.
I think the scoff you started with was a little too much because it drowned out the if.
I kind of felt that too as I did it.
Yeah. But,
on that line, but other than that, it's
Yeah.
I would say just stick with the same performance, but have the attitude after the scoff. You know, like scoff in your head, but have the attitude of it afterwards. You know, if you have to ask, you can't afford it.
A mental scoff.
Yeah. A brain scoff. Go for it. Let's hear it again. Let's hear it one more time.
Okay.
If there's one thing this city's taught me, you can put a price on anything. Secrets, reputation, a life. And trust, if you have to ask, you can't afford it. But then I suppose none of that matters when you're me. After all, when did I ever pay for anything?
All right. What did everybody think of that one?
And I think that would be the one that books him right there.
Yes.
Yay.
How did that feel to you, Sean?
That felt a lot better. I felt smoother on the scoff too. That felt a lot better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you just injected the attitude, and that was perfect. That's exactly what you needed right there.
Cool. Right on. I like it.
Awesome.
So let's see, who was next? It was Shane, right?
Yep.
All right.
Oh, Shane's turning in circles over there.
Yeah. Video's going all over the place.
And then it's gone. Unmute, Shane.
If you're speaking, we can't hear you, Shane.
Okay, here we go.
Yeah, sticky mute button.
If there's one thing this city's taught me, you can put a price on anything. Secrets, reputations, a life. And trust, you have to ask. You can't afford it. But then I suppose none of that matters when you're me. After all, when did I ever pay for anything?
That felt like it had a bit of that jaded edge we were talking about not using.
Yeah. Oh,
Just a little.
Yeah.
Okay.
I could kind of see that towards the end, but I think in general it was pretty good.
Yeah. It was just that last line, it kind of had a little bit more of a punch to it.
Yeah, a little bitterness, I think is what I'd say. But yeah, jaded.
Yeah, especially on pay. Like pay was really strong.
And literally when you're saying that last line, your general attitude is, hey, for me, everything's free.
Yeah, almost probably a hint of sarcasm when you say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you definitely have that hint of sarcasm at the end, but mostly it's just, well, I found my way around the system. I think that last little bit, after all, when did I ever pay for anything, is almost like that carefree sort of, whatever. They're involved in all their crap. They just pay me, and that's all I care about.
So one more from the top.
Please do.
Okay. If there's one thing this city's taught me, you can put a price on anything. Secrets, reputations, a life, and trust. If you have to ask, you can't afford it. But then, I suppose none of that matters when you're me. After all, when did I ever pay for anything?
There you go.
Fantastic. That was a fantastic read.
Yay!
Very, very good. It definitely felt like you inhabited that character a lot more than that previous read, though you weren't that far off in the previous read too.
Yeah.
So real good show.
We need you back next week to do 5 different types of scream.
There's a monologue in the movie that I was telling you about that it's Clooney after he and J-Lo have, shall we say, known each other at the
Okay.
and they're having this conversation in bed because she's afraid that he's just going to go tell everybody what he just did to a federal marshal, and he's explaining to her that he's not going to go blabbing to everybody what he has just accomplished, so to speak, and that and then he's giving examples of all the idiots he knows that are just bad thieves and bad bank robbers and bad people who did not successfully escape from prison the way he has. So that to me was this script is very much like that monologue in the movie.
Yeah, well, I mean, whatever you drew on, it absolutely worked.
Yeah.
I think it worked fantastically for this read. You did really, really good with it.
Excellent.
So then next is Goldie.
Yes. And now I'm asking, why is he even telling all this to someone if he doesn't usually share?
I would say he's telling this to a young apprentice thief. Someone who's they think they know everything, so he's kind of giving them a little,
What for?
Either that,
experience is.
Either that or a victim.
Yeah.
True. Yeah.
True.
So it's up to you who you want the audience to be.
Okay. If there's one thing the city's taught me, you can put a price on anything. Secrets, reputations, a life, and trust. If you have to ask, you can't afford it. But then, I suppose none of all that matters when you're me. After all, when did I ever pay for anything?
Okay, opening it up. What did everybody think?
Overall, very good.
Yeah. I almost say with Goldie's read, I think of her character being similar in nature to Catwoman.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
You know, because really she's got that same attitude
Mm-hmm.
in
Well,
her approach to life.
Yeah, I found that it suddenly shifted a lot when I was trying to. That it, yeah, had more of a Catwoman, a little bit of a
Well, so
seductive, but
I don't know how. I'm not super familiar with the history of Catwoman, but I don't believe she's really into killing.
No, she's not into killing, but she does have that same type of a slant on having grown up on the streets and having that this monologue would almost fit her.
I'm probably thinking of what's her name? One of the Overwatch characters. She has like a spider logo as her thing.
Widowmaker.
Widowmaker, yes.
You see, the issue that I'm having with the read, and I'd like to dissent that I think it needs a little bit more work, is that it felt too seductive.
Okay.
It didn't feel ruthless.
Ruthless.
It didn't really have that edge of a life is disposable. Like it's just another contract. I do this for money.
So you want a colder read, not a...
Yeah. I think this character specifically here doesn't give a crap about anything.
Okay.
Just when they get theirs, when they're going to get paid, covering their own back, that's the only thing this character cares about. And while I think Catwoman might be a good place to start with, I don't feel that she's a ruthless enough character to really fit with this.
Okay.
And Widowmaker... I'm not super familiar with the Overwatch characters. I know that she's an assassin. I know that she was sort of bred to be an assassin sort of thing. But the thing about the Overwatch universe is that it's not that cutthroat.
Yeah, it's true. Okay.
Goldie, I'm thinking Bonnie and Clyde. If
that might be a good one.
Yeah.
Okay.
She was pretty ruthless. If you ever saw that movie.
All right. Let me try this again. If there's one thing the city's taught me, you can put a price on anything. Secrets, reputation, a life, and trust. If you have to ask, you can't afford it. But then I suppose none of all that matters when you're me. After all, when did I ever pay for anything?
Okay, so you're adding all after of. None of all that matters when you're me. It's just none of that matters when you're me.
Okay, got it.
The other thing is something that you added in your previous couple of reads that you threw in here were these laughs, a life and trust. If you have to ask for it, you can't afford it.
Yeah.
That sort of brings it into this catty, almost like. I can't really describe it other than Valley Girl feel, bully sort of feel. Again, this is a character that's just as comfortable taking your money as stabbing you in the throat.
Okay.
This is almost complete emotional detachment.
Okay.
Like that's where a lot of the shock is going to come from. The fact that if this is a life that you're trying to take, if that's just as disposable as anything else, then what does this person care for? Well, themselves.
Okay.
I also felt like you kind of rushed through it a little bit.
Okay, yeah, I thought it was a little bit fast.
I picked up on that too, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Let's try it again. If there's one thing the city's taught me, you can put a price on anything. Secrets, reputation, a life, and trust. If you have to ask, you can't afford it. But then I suppose none of all that matters when you're me. After all, when did I ever pay for anything?
Definitely much better that time around, but you still added none of all that. Still
How do I
added the
get
all
this
there.
all in here?
Yeah, I don't know where all is coming from. Is none of that matters when you're me.
Brandon's like, ad lib all, ad lib all.
Okay, let me
No,
see
but
what I can.
I think in general that was the right feel. What did everybody else think though?
That was that sounds
Yeah.
like the
Okay.
I think it sounded perfect, but I think they're like if you have to ask, you can't afford it. It almost needed a little more sass on it, like just kind of
Okay.
like that scoff thing that we were talking about.
Okay, I was trying not to go.
Too
Casual.
far into that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely don't go syrupy, but
Yeah.
add it in.
All right. One more time without an all.
Yeah.
If there's one thing this city's taught me, you can put a price on anything. Secrets, reputation, a life, and trust. If you have to ask, you can't afford it. But then I suppose none of that matters when you're me. After all, when did I ever pay for anything?
Yeah, that was
That was
the
it.
money right there.
Yep.
Nailed it.
Come in- I need you to come in next week and fall 6 different ways.
No, definitely. You had the right emotional detachment. You left out all.
Yay.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's only one all in there, and that's what mattered the most. Well, no, it's not what mattered most. That was your biggest trip up. The attitude was right. The delivery was good. There was that little laugh before. If you have to ask, you can't afford it, but that's easily cut out. I would not consider that a problem whatsoever. I think that was absolutely spot on delivery.
Cool.
Sweet.
Hey, Dan
But
is
that's just my
stationary.
review.
Got it.
Hey, Dan's not in the car anymore.
Yeah,
He is in.
I just noticed that, so I pasted it.
I am in the garage.
Well, welcome to the garage.
Okay, so now I can untuck that.
Yeah, I sold all my magic cards.
Sold all of them?
Yeah.
Oh, I hope some of them are worth some good money.
My full collection went for 1,400.
Okay, that's pretty good. Alrighty then.
1.5, but
Hey, you know what? That's 1,400 you didn't have, right?
yeah, and cards I got rid of.
So it's more storage space and some extra money. I'd say that's a win-win. Alrighty then. So next up was Alan, right? All right.
Okay. If there's one thing this city's taught me, you can put a price on anything. Secrets, reputations, a life, and trust. If you have to ask, you can't afford it. But then I suppose none of that matters when you're me. After all, when did I ever pay for anything?
All right. Opening it up. What did y'all think?
That sounded evil. It was like the Joker or something.
Norman, is that you? Are you there, Norman?
So too evil?
Yeah.
No. Well,
Good
sorry.
evil.
Go ahead, Nathan.
Well, I mean, being that this person is probably talking to a victim or a possible target for whatever scam, scheme, whatever's going on, maybe just a little bit too edgy, and
Okay.
you probably just dial it back just maybe about a fifth, not too far back. That
Go
way
from
you're not-
supervillain to villain.
Okay.
that way you're not about to go into the famous.
Okay. So try it again.
Yeah.
If there's one thing this city's taught me, you can put a price on anything. Secrets, reputations, a life, And trust? If you have to ask, you can't afford it. But then I suppose none of that matters when you're me. After all, when did I ever pay for anything?
Yeah,
I like that.
better,
Yeah.
better.
Okay.
Still kind of scary, but
It
yeah,
was-
that was
There was much less. Venom. There was much less venom on that, and I didn't expect him to say, "Okay, mother, I'm on my way."
Alrighty then.
Because I mean, we're dealing with a thief, not a psychopath. So
Are you sure?
So, next was Nathan, right?
yes.
Okay.
If there's one thing this city's taught me, you can put a price on anything. Secrets, reputations, a life. And trust, if you have to ask, you can't afford it. But then, I suppose none of that matters when you're me. After all, when did I ever pay for anything? I slid into the evil, didn't I?
Yeah.
You did a little bit, but I thought it was really, really good.
Yeah,
It was
I
a
like
very-
it.
I
Like
enjoyed
the way you did
it.
it fit.
Me. It scared me. You're scaring me. Nathan.
Scary Nathan. Well, I'm glad we've got this recorded because I don't think we'll see that very often. Scary Nathan.
I've done creepy Nathan. Now I've done scary Nathan.
To me, it sounds like you're talking to somebody you're trying to get to hire you or something instead of like a target is what it sounded like with Nathan reading it. That's what I pictured in my head. It's like he's trying to get a job or whatever. Somebody's trying to hire him.
Okay.
You know, being this is a character, maybe I should throw just a little bit of a twist on it.
All right, let's hear it.
I'm coming at it with the attitude, but I'm coming out with the attitude from a different place. If there's one thing this city's taught me, you can put a price on anything. Secrets, reputations, a life, and trust. If you have to ask, you can't afford it. But then I suppose none of that matters when you're me. After all, when did I ever pay for anything?
You see, I
Weird.
would see that in like an animated show.
I was picturing like a mouse in a tuxedo or something.
Or
Like
This
a
is
Godfather
Frankie
kind of thing.
I mean, Frankie.
There might be a reason for that. I probably just drew from Rocket. Hey, give me his arm. I want his arm.
It must have reminded me of the character on I forget what his name is, but the character from Oliver Twist, like the leader.
I-
Like
Roger.
oh, yeah. I know what you're talking about. It's been a long time.
Falchion.
Tom Sykes. No.
No, Falchion. What's his name?
Dan almost has it. Here,
Oh,
I'll look it up.
Fagin. Or,
Fagin. Yeah, Fagin.
Yeah, that's it.
the
Fagin.
nice one or the bad one? Okay. Because there's
Yeah.
Fagin and there's Tom Sykes.
all right. Then I'm gonna try it from this angle. All right. If there's one thing this city's taught me, you can put a price on anything: secrets, reputations, a life, and trust. If you have to ask, you can't afford it. But then I suppose none of that matters when you're me. After all, when did I ever pay for anything?
Jason Statham.
Why is the rum always gone?
I don't think that voice would really fit with what we agreed was the actual feel.
Yeah.
It wasn't a bad delivery, but it definitely didn't fit.
No, it kind of
Fagin was
pulled.
always the friendly one. It's the problem. If you were doing the Sykes,
Fagin.
whatever his name, Bill Sykes. There we go. Then that would be more of the character that we're looking at, because he was the
Yeah.
ruthless one who beat upon his girlfriend and took whatever he needed whenever he needed it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think more of that sort of like the first read that you did, but with a little less emotion, with a little bit more callousness, was probably where you need to be for this one.
Understood. If there's one thing this city's taught me, you can put a price on anything. Secrets, reputations, a life, and trust. If you have to ask, you can't afford it. But then I suppose none of that matters when you're me. After all, when did I ever pay for anything?
Yeah, I would say that's definitely it. That's definitely the place you need to be for this one. It was good.
Awesome.
You almost had that "be careful or you might lose your head" kind of feel. This thing, by the way, is permanently in my booth, so I'm going to be using it often.
Well, with that one, I started like tapping back to the accent, but just slight, not trying to just totally go into Brooklyn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the funny thing is from what I've seen, my observations of you, Nathan, is that your different character feels are tied to the different voices that you have assigned to them. So when you use the voice, for you, the voice and the attitude are inseparable. So using some of that helps to bring out that sort of that feel and that idea that you've got going on with that particular character style. And I think you tapped into it just enough in this script to really pull out that sort of untrustworthy, dark, shifty person. And it turned out good.
Awesome. Yeah. See, because I like on that, the New York read, I'm thinking Goodfellas, and of course pulled a little bit of Rocket in there, and because it did end up coming out cartoony in a sort of way. I have that habit. I was made for cartoons, people. I was.
Well, you can channel that to be used in other places.
Yes, absolutely. But it's like okay, if I just kind of I over-seasoned it. All right, this next batch, just a pinch. That's all it. And
well, there you go. It worked.
Yes, cooking analogies work in voiceover because it's just like cooking.
A little bit of this character, a little attitude from that one.
Michael, you are up next, and then we got to give it to Dan because he hasn't got to read yet.
Well, I was actually thinking I would go ahead and give a place for Dan, let him go, and we'll have, since we've got plenty of time, and since the script is pretty short, we'll have like a mini personal mic check for him.
That can work.
So, read, discussion, read again.
Okay.
Dan, you down with that?
Sure. Why don't you go ahead and read? That way I can, and then we can do mine at the end.
You sure?
Yeah, I've got time today. I already did all my stuff today.
All right. Then we'll stick with the order, and we'll have last but not least, Dan. If there's one thing this city's taught me, you can put a price on anything. Secrets, reputations, a life, and trust. If you have to ask, you can't afford it. But I suppose none of that matters when you're me. After all, when did I ever pay for anything?
Dun, dun, dun.
That was good.
I have nothing to say to that. That was
It was actually a very good read.
Think of something constructive, but you just did it really
Yeah.
good. So.
Michael's just like, okay, I took my own direction and I went with it.
Yeah.
Well, that's one thing I've been really attempting to do in my own personal auditioning is try to take self-direction. So that's something I'm practicing.
Self-direction.
I would
hardest
just
thing in the
say
world.
do it one more time, but just try to be a little colder. Like I was listening to you, and there was a certain amount of friendliness that was coming through. If you could just.
Okay. A little bit more threatening, a little colder. Okay. If there's one thing this city's taught me, you can put a price on anything. Secrets, reputations, a life, and trust. If you have to ask, you can't afford it. But then, I suppose none of that matters when you're me. After all, when did I ever pay for anything?
So for me, I like that better.
Yeah, that was much more edgy.
Yeah, it had that nice, cold feel.
The puppy agrees.
My dog
Yep.
agrees.
I'm sorry, that was perfectly timed.
I like it.
Yeah, I've been reading a series of books by the author R.A. Salvatore, or Salvatore. I don't know exactly how to pronounce it, but yeah, there's a certain character that I'm trying to draw off of for this specifically. And
Drizzt?
no, not Drizzt, Artemis.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, because assassin, thief, I think it works perfectly. Drizzt is too noble for this. You kidding me?
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, that's kind of what I was trying to draw on. So anyway, last but not least, we have Dan.
I'm here.
All right, Dan.
So
go
I'm
ahead.
gonna go off of what I heard from everybody else, and you guys all know that I'm not the king of Zone 1 reads, so I'm gonna try it anyway. Like Michael down here.
Perfect.
If there's one thing this city's taught me, you could put a price on anything. Secrets, reputations, a life, and trust. If you have to ask, you can't afford it. But then I suppose none of that matters when you're me. After all, when did I ever pay for anything?
Okay. So then let's go ahead, since you missed out on most of the discussion. You probably heard a little bit of it when you were in the car.
I was driving.
Okay, good. You were paying attention to the road and not what was going on your phone. That's good. First of all, way to be an example. Secondly, let's talk about this character. What do you feel from this character? Having gone through it now, what do you get about this person's personality, about who they are?
They're pretty well detached from reality. For
Okay.
one. The obviously assassin, rogue, thief.
Mm-hmm.
Probably a traitor in secrets, so he doesn't actually talk very loud to begin with.
Another R.A. Salvatore character, Jarlaxle.
Yeah. So definitely a hushed tone, maybe a little gritty, and obviously you guys were talking about the villain thing.
Yeah, you're moving a little bit to the voice quality. I just want to stick with the character's personality just to start with. So, hushed, dark, gritty, things like that. If you could give me like 3 good words to describe them, just single words, what would you assign?
Disturbed.
Okay.
Private.
Private. Okay.
Untrusting.
Disturbed, private, and untrusting. Okay. Would everybody say that's pretty accurate from our discussions?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we didn't quite go with disturbed, but the detached isn't the problem with that.
Detached makes more sense than disturbed, I think.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. Other than that, I say you nailed it.
Okay, then. So now that we've got sort of the personality down, now we can talk about voice tone. Now we can talk about how this person's actually going to sound. So the emotion that's coming through with your voice, what do you think this person is going to sound like? If you were speaking with them, if you were listening to them, how do you describe their delivery and their voice?
Probably close to deadpan, with just
Okay.
a hint of anger or frustration or not. I'm looking for the right word. It's not the right words.
Yeah, anger, frustration. What we sort of agreed upon is almost callous, unfeeling, uncaring, threatening.
Threatening. That would work. I can do that.
Okay.
Maybe.
Well, I mean, if you read what's going on here, if you read into it, obviously this person's in a world where the only thing that matters is covering your own back and getting paid for your work. You know, this person has lumped in a life, somebody's life, with something as intangible as a reputation or as a secret. So obviously there's some emotional detachment there. There's some callousness towards the sanctity of a living person. So, I mean, depending on how messed up you are, that's probably going to take some acting to do. But yeah.
I do have a recommendation for that. Is not trying to mask your natural Texas accent
Okay.
when you're reading it, because you can actually add that to that character. You know,
If there's one thing this city's taught me, you can put a price on anything.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, because it just for you, it adds to what that character is. You know, and it goes back to
And then it sounds like it's in the Wild West instead of.
Well, that's
sure.
fine.
I mean, you could be somewhere in Dallas, you know, or Houston for that matter. You know, not necessarily Wild West, or even El Paso. Not that El Paso is a huge place, but you know, I got a boss from El Paso that used to be a cop. So, you know what I'm saying? It's just one of those things where it's like it no matter where in the world you are, you know, and as we were discussing early on, your attitude first, but you can layer in that natural accent where it's on top of that attitude, and it'll create a really compelling character.
I think I do a bit more emotion when I have my accent anyway. I pull a bit more of the emotion out of it. So let's try it.
Yeah, give it a read.
If there's one thing this city's taught me, you can put a price on anything. Secrets, reputations, a life, and trust. If you have to ask, you can't afford it. But then I suppose none of that matters when you're me. After all, when did I ever pay for anything?
All right. What did you all think?
Like that a lot. I felt like the last line needed a little bit of a tweak, but I'm not sure what it is.
I think the last line needed a little more energy.
When did I ever pay for anything? After all, when did I ever pay for anything? Oh, I see what you're saying. So like it's a shot in the nuts kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, one of those kind.
You basically have just described the world that you live in and how you've just snubbed your nose at it. When did I ever pay for anything?
Yeah, because, hey, I'm a thief, man. I do get free lunch. That's that attitude right there. I do get free lunch.
When did I ever pay for anything?
Yeah, maybe not that much, but if you can fit that sort of same sort of attitude into that read, I think you'll have it.
The whole read or just that one line?
Just at the end.
Okay. I got an idea. Hold on. All right.
Nice.
If there's one thing this city's taught me, you can put a price on anything. Secrets, reputations, a life, and trust. If you have to ask, you can't afford it. And trust, if you have to ask, you can't afford it. But then I suppose none of that matters when you're me. After all, when did I ever pay for anything? I did it again. After all, when did I ever pay for anything?
Okay. What did everybody think?
I think his last sentence sounded a bit better.
Mhm.
He had some more of that snark in there, but I think he started to lose out on the scoff on if you have to ask, you can't afford it.
Oh, I missed it this time.
You
Yeah,
just
like,
think about it. That's kind of, from what it seems like, that if you have to ask, you can't afford it. It's kind of like an inside joke for his world. You know, like if you actually have to ask for the help, if you have to ask for the trust, you don't have deep enough pockets to afford not having a knife in your back. You know, 'cause it's either you pay or you die. So, at least to me, that has always come off as this is like the inside joke of what I do.
If you have to ask, you can't afford it. If you have to ask, you can't afford it. Oh, that was terrible.
Think of it as more like a scoff, like, you know, you're making fun of him.
I did a little
If
chuckle.
you
in the
have to
last
ask, you can't afford it. So there's an attitude that comes with the chuckle. If you could reach into that's sort of like almost amused attitude without using the chuckle, that would be perfect. I wish you were here for Sean's read, because Sean did that perfectly.
yeah, we talked about like a psh, but like you don't say the psh, you think it while you're talking.
A mind scoff, I think is what we call
Yeah,
it.
the mind scoff.
A mind scoff. You just sort of like add that, "Pff," if you have to ask, you can't afford it. But the pff happens in your brain, so.
Yeah, I'm scoffing inside.
Yeah, you just gotta give a little tilt to your head. You have to ask. You can't
Yeah.
afford it.
Yeah, like that. Yeah, you did it.
If there's one thing this city's taught me, you can put a price on anything. Secrets, reputations, a life, and trust. If you have to ask, you can't afford it. But then, I suppose none of that matters when you're me. After all, when did I ever pay for anything?
Nice.
That was good.
That was really good.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
He found his way into that character.
You done it. Congrats.
I done
You did it.
You done it.
I done
You
did
done
it.
did it. No, but seriously, you brought together all of the direction that we had. I'm glad we were able to do that sort of one-on-one discussion about who this character is, because I think that helped you out with focusing in a little bit more on the person. What I noticed this time around versus one of the last times that we had sort of a little bit more of an animated script, is that when you did use your natural, Texas accent, it didn't mess you up. It felt like you were able to flow into the character pretty easily.
I'm not drinking tonight.
Because I remember it was during it was the one where we had the Splatoon thing.
Yeah.
Going into the accent really threw you off. And this time, whether it was with your, whether you tried to hide the accent or whether you used the accent, it seemed like you were able to play the character much easier in both ways.
I want to actually try it without the accent this time. Let's see if I can
Go
pull
for
this off. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I. Okay. Sorry. Had to fix my throat.
No worries.
If there's one thing if there's one thing this city's taught me, you can put a price on anything. Secrets, reputations, a life, and trust. If you have to ask, you can't afford it. If you have to ask, you can't afford it. But then, I suppose none of that matters when you're me. After all, when did I ever pay for anything? Yeah, no, I'm actually thinking. I was thinking about my accent this time too, and that was just a little bit more difficult this time around.
Yeah, I can still feel the attitude.
The hard thing is like getting into it and then letting it go.
That's the hard part right there. Yeah.
The core of any character read any character read is your attitude. You know, it doesn't matter if you're reading in a high falsetto or reading like a 12-year-old kid. I was talking about this.
I actually heard that on the car.
Okay. Yeah, because if you're reading like a 12-year-old kid, you can still pull this off. You know, even if you're 12 years old. It's just a matter of attitude. And no, I don't have a bad one, Mom. So,
if there's one thing this city taught me, you can put a price on anything.
now that sounds like a character from Ratchet and Clank.
Yeah.
It would be fun to try it with a kid voice.
Yeah, be the most threatening child you can be.
Yeah.
If there's one thing this city's taught me,
Oh no, sorry.
Old prospector.
Old.
If there's one thing this city's taught me.
If there's one thing this city's taught me, you can put a price on anything. Secrets, reputation, a life, and trust. If you have to ask, you can't afford it. But then I suppose none of that matters when you're me. After all, when did I ever pay for anything?
nah.
Yeah, that sounds like a schoolyard bully.
Yeah.
Really, you could get this. That you know, the character when he was much younger,
Artful Dodger?
stealing lunch money.
Only not as nice.
If there's one thing the city's taught me, you can put a price on
Stitch.
secrets, reputation, a life, and trust. If you have to ask, you can't afford it. But then I suppose none of that matters when you're me. After all, when did I ever pay for anything?
All right, well, wrap it up. We're done.
It's just in the hole in the wall again.
On your go.
Okay, this is the end of the mic check, and as you can see, if you're a newcomer to this, we love to have fun here. And hey, that's all part of being an actor, is having fun. And I did say being an actor because we like to put the actor in voice actor. You know, especially me. Just, hey, you know what? You're an actor first, then you do the voice thing, no matter what you're doing. But, okay, this is the end of the mic check. We're here next Monday. We are on Twitter. We are on YouTube. And if you're watching us on YouTube, come on down and join us live every Monday night, 7 o'clock Eastern, 4 o'clock Pacific. It is a lot of fun. A lot of fun. So we'll see you next week.
Join us every Monday for free script practice. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter, too. If you liked what you saw, then subscribe for more.